Revolution. Moreover, where did all those kids go to work in 1820 or 1840 or 1860? When they graduated from 6th grade, where did they go to work? Factories. So you were literally training them to go into the work environment where they were going to be either well employed or not employed. So the school was not about education. It was never about education. It was about socialization and training. It was socializing kids to work in an environment that moved at a fixed pace. Remember, there were bells and whistles on the wall. Did any of your schools have bells and whistles on the wall so that literally after an hour went by, the bell goes off? Why? Because that was the environment those kids were going to go to work in. They had to be used to everything moving at a fixed pace. Toom, 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 toom. They had to be used to somebody in charge, a supervisor of the assembly line. Teachers became supervisors of assembly lines. Every teacher who teaches in a modern school today knows they have 1 hour to cover this amount of curriculum. And they have 1 semester to cover this amount of curriculum. And they've got to get through the standardized curriculum in a standardized amount of time. We all take this for granted, like it's based on the laws of physics or the nature of the universe. It's not. It's history. It's very simple. It's history. Think about it. What's something we know about learning? Let's just say, as human beings, we actually know a lot about learning because human beings are learners. It's in our nature. What are some of the things we know about learning? How does learning occur? How did you learn to walk? Spirit, curiosity, and experience. In other words, you learn to walk by falling down. Right? Right? You learn to talk by making all kinds of strange noises, right? That's how you learn to talk. Remember the little infant with a spoon or chopsticks misses the mouth most of the time because they haven't yet learned this. Sometimes it goes here, sometimes it goes here. All learning is a process of doing. And all learning is a process of making errors. We all know that. Think about the word mistake. By the time you've been in school, a modern, urban, what I would call industrial age school, think about the meaning of the word mistake by the time you're 7 or 8 years old. Think about the time when you were a kid and you got a test back, had big red marks on it, and it said C or D. How did you feel? Like a D. Like a what? Like a D. Like a D. Yeah, you didn't feel so good, right? Failure. What if my parents find out? Right? Fear. Exactly. Now, remember to when you were 9 months old. If you had been afraid of falling down, you would not have learned to walk. You understand? If you had been afraid of falling off the bicycle, don't get me wrong, no kid wants to fall down. No kid wants to fall off their bicycle. But if you were literally traumatized by that fear, you would not have learned to walk. You would have not have learned to talk. You would have not have learned how to ride a bicycle. I remember many, many years ago, I heard an educator say something I've never forgotten. She said, we have no idea the trauma the young child suffers at school. We have no idea the trauma the young child suffers at school. We take it for granted because we all went through it. We all went through the loss of our love of trial and error, the loss of our love of curiosity, the loss of just trying something because it's fun. And yes, you'll fall down, but that's the only way you'll ever learn. Mistake making became bad. It's that simple. So I never really understood this too deeply until I had an experience as a parent. Our oldest son, this is a true story, our oldest son was 6 years old, so he was in the second grade, the beginning of his second grade semester, came home from school one day with a drawing of a house. kids make drawings. He made a drawing of a house. He came home, the drawing had a letter C on it. It's a true story. Many people think that can't be true. It's a true story. He got a C on his drawing of a house at the age of 6 years old. What do you think he decided that day? I cannot draw. I will never draw. He never drew again. My wife is an artist. She was more than a little upset. She was very upset. So when he grew up, so he got a scientist father and an artist wife, so he grew up from the age of 3 or so. He has his little personal computer. That was me. And he has his easel right next to it, his easel, right? And like all kids will use whatever is in their environment for learning. If they're poor, they'll use sticks and stones. It doesn't really matter. They'll use whatever artifacts are in their environment for learning because human beings are designed to learn. So as a child growing up, he's drawing, he's painting, he's playing on his computer. Just goes back and forth. Very natural for him. He never used his easel again. Now, I tell you that story because most all of us have stories like that. And when we reflect on those stories, we'll understand what that educator meant. We have no idea the trauma the young child suffers at school. How many of you learned by the age of 7 or 8 that you couldn't draw? Or that you couldn't sing? Or that you couldn't do math? Now, I'm not sure you're getting that. Or you couldn't write well, right? Which ones have I forgotten? All of us have these stories. They're part of our history. I sang one day and the teacher said, please go to the back of the group and just move your mouth. Don't let any noises come out. Right? So why is this happening? This is happening for the exact same reason that competitiveness is today the number one issue for most societies concerned about their education. The purpose of the school system is to train workers for factories. Just remember that. Historically, that was literally true. Today, the purpose of the school system is to train people to go into jobs in whatever are the industries, so that the country can have healthy industries, so society can have GDP growth, and so the society will be competitive. It's all one mindset. Businesses will grow. Business drives school, period. The agenda of business has driven the industrial age school for 200 years. Nothing has changed. Schools have been around for tens of thousands of years. All societies have systems for educating their children. All societies. The modern industrial age school is very young. It's very new. We think it's the only way things could be, but we should think again. There is a traditional system of education that's common to all societies around the world for most of the last 10 to 30,000 years. What is it? How does it work? Not the modern school, the traditional system of education. Think about it. There's one word in English that usually characterizes it. How would you characterize the traditional system of education? Before there were even schools, organized as schools, there was apprenticeship. Apprenticeship is a traditional form of education. You want to learn something, you go to somebody who knows how to do it. And you become an apprentice to that person. When you're very young, you're doing that with adults in all kinds of different ways, spontaneously. You watch when a young person is a teenager, 12, 13, 14 years old. Their attention immediately starts to drift away from their mother and their father. When they're 7 or 8 years old, their attention very much focused on their mother and father. But at a certain age, you realize there's things I need to learn about life. I'd be much easier to learn from an aunt or an uncle or another adult. Most of our history, we grew up in tribes. there were lots of adults around. Now that might sound like a romantic idea from long ago, but let me tell you a school I recently saw that's reestablished a very interesting model of apprenticeship. This is a public school. It's in New Mexico. In the 10th grade, so kids are now maybe 14 or 15 years old. They're just starting secondary school. They can pick anything they want to learn from anybody in their community, and that'll become one of their classes. I can want to learn carpentry, and I will spend the equivalent of a half a day to a day a week with a local carpenter. Or I may want to learn desktop publishing, and I'll go and find some adults who would have a business in desktop publishing, or whatever, or magazine writing, or whatever. It's a class. It counts as one of my classes. Think about it. What they've done is re-established apprenticeship. Now, why does apprenticeship have something that we should think about? Why is it a good model of learning at some level? I'm not saying it's perfect, but I'm trying to make a point here. We think school is the way school is because it's always been that way. No. Okay? There were plenty of examples of education prior to the industrial age. And I'm going back to the oldest model, the very oldest. Apprenticeship has two things that are very important that we could learn from. It's real life. The context is real. It's not an artificial context of a schoolroom. Tests are inherently artificial. Life is not about the test. Of course, a lot of kids in school think life is about the test, right? But it's artificial. You either are successful in building this as a carpenter or you're not, okay? Assessment is what educators would call authentic assessment. You judge your competency in the context of doing something that you really are trying to do. And of course, that's the other part of it. It's learner-centered, so it's something I want to learn. And then, of course, the last part of it is relational. You're learning from a mentor. Mentoring, apprenticeship, different ways to say the same thing. It's relational. That school, if you think about what a simple little idea, it's very simple. And it really is a class. Kids can pick anything they want to learn from someone in the community. And then for a year, for a whole year, they will spend a half day to a day a week working with those people to learn it. One, it's very real, and the motivation is very high because it's something I want to learn. Secondly, you build up a network of adults who are now part of the school. The school and the community are starting to get connected. This is another subtle loss in the industrial age. School became more and more fragmented from the community. Adults became more and more isolated from the lives of children. See, there's two sides of this. It's easy to forget the second side. One is children need the benefit of many, many adult relationships. But secondly, adults need the benefit of time with children. So when we separate that off and make teaching the province of a profession called teachers, and the teachers are different from the parents, then we have a deep problem. Right? First off, the parents sometimes can't even get into school. The educators don't even want to see them because the educators are so busy trying to accomplish what they've got to accomplish in a little bit of time, and they don't have enough resources, and the last thing in the world they need is a parent coming by to talk about their kid. But what's a more natural thing than for the parent to want to be involved in the learning process of their children? So we have to appreciate that the industrial age school is a particular model. It had its place at a particular point in time. Believe me, in 1810 or 1820 in London, England, you had one primary societal need. You needed factory workers. The school system answered that need. In fact, if you ever want to read a very poignant account of this, read Dickens. Wrote a wonderful essay on the school in the London, Charles Dickens, the same Charles Dickens of Christmas Carol and all those famous novels, and Oliver Twist, and the factory-like environment that kids had to live in school so that they would be trained properly to live in it as employees of the factories. It's easy to forget. One, it's all about standardization. The other basic problem with the model, well, let's just summarize what I've just said. First, it fragments school from life. The parents and the teachers are two separate groups. They don't work together. Secondly, it's all artificial. What do you mean? It's artificial. It's not like, how do I ride a bicycle? How do I get along with my friends? How do I build something I want to build? It takes an artificial set of goals established by the teacher